Thank you everyone for joining us. This is Natasha Telger with the Illinois WorkNet, and we're very happy to have Brian Stoner with LWIA 25 with us today as well. Today we are going to have a real brief overview of what we have been working on and our background information, and then Brian will be going over some of the information that they learned whenever they were working on with the NOCTI assessment. So to go ahead and get started. And also, I did send out an email to everyone, and that had a download link to the resources. And those are also available in the file share pod at the bottom of your screen. So if you didn't get that excuse me, email for whatever reason, you can go ahead and download those resources from this file share pod. There was one file share that I wasn't able to upload to the download page, and that was called the Assessment Implementation Group, that special page for your work group that's available on the Workforce Pathway, and it's also available here in the file share pod. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that those resources were available for you. So just as a brief overview, what we've been talking about over the past few months is we're trying to put together, resources that would help prepare a college and career-ready individual. And the three components that we've been discussing are academic, the technical, and the employability skills. And what we've been talking about is how those fit across the WIA continuum of services. So we have our academic portion that you work with daily. We have training programs for the technical side. The NOCTI 21st Century Skills and the quick observational assessment to Illinois WorkNet. So that's primarily what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the observational assessment and the 21st Century Skills Assessment. We do have LWIA 25 with us today, and they have already kind of got a jump start on using the NOCTI 21st Century Skills. It wasn't offered through Illinois WorkNet, but yet it was still, they started using it so they could kind of give us some feedback on things assessments that are available through Illinois WorkNet, and you'll see that some of these are not new, of course, but they will be updated. They're not updated at this moment, but that's that's part of the overall plan, is to update these so that they fit within the overall process. And these are part of the download. So we've already looked at these in previous webinars, but in case you haven't had an opportunity to look at them, this is a process flow, and this is available for download in the file share right below the pod that I'm pointing at right now. And what it does, it just walks you through the process. So, first of all, you have a person, they come in, they take the computer skills assessment, and then you can have them take a pre-assessment and go through the activities and the career interest inventories. And you can have them do the observational assessment. You can have them do the NOCTI assessment. And then we have the worksite evaluation that would be completed by the employer. So with this, what we have here is just several different assessments that are available through Illinois WorkNet. And the idea is that we're not trying to endorse one single assessment, but basically endorsing your overall program. And whenever this idea came about, or we had discussed the overall endorsing of a program at the initial assessment implementation work group, that's whenever we put together, based on your feedback, the implementation guide. So the implementation guide has background information, but it has a step-by-step implementation plan. So you take a look at the overall timeline, it has all the planning tools, but it has, basically step-by-step of, let's look at your current process, where does training need to take place, what kind of tools, if we have new tools, what other kind of training needs to take place, how are we going to get the feedback, so that you can have local employers endorse your overall program and not just a single assessment. Also, out of that initial meeting, we also have our early adopters. So when we talk about the NOCTI 21st Century Skills Assessment, that'll be available for early adopters. And once the early adopters have used the NOCTI assessment and provided feedback on implementing that into their process or their program, then we'll go ahead and open it up to our Stage 2 adopters in other areas. This is a timeline that's part of the implementation plan, and as you can see, we're right here in July. So we're working on the initial training. Online single sign-on. You don't have to need to go to another place, remember another password, remember another code. It'll be available through Illinois workNet. So you'll get a little sample of that today, but the actual implementation or rollout will not begin until on Monday. That's when you'll have access. Early adopters will have full access to the NOCTI assessments on Monday. But we don't want to forget the overall planning process. So we do need to think about, how, if you haven't already, how this fits in with your overall process, and who are you identifying first to complete the NOCTI assessments or use the observational assessments. Some people had mentioned, their youth groups, because they're already together, they meet for whatever reason or another. But the idea is identifying your customers, working with the marketing materials. Then we'll be working on, getting employer feedback and so forth. And then that would lead to your endorsements. So right now, that was just kind of a real brief overview of what we have been working on so far. And then I'd like it to turn it over to Brian Stoner with LWIA 25, because they have actually started using the NOCTI assessment already.
Thank you very much, Natasha. I would like to start by giving a little bit of a background of why we were using it. Recently, we received some monies from a national emergency grant to provide a work readiness workshop and to place dislocated workers into an on-the-job training with employers in the area. So once again, part of this grant required us to give this work readiness workshop. With the work readiness workshop, we were also required to show some type of assessment of skills learned throughout the workshop. During this time when we were NOCTI as the assessment tool for this work readiness workshop. So we were using this for dislocated workers from a manufacturing facility. We had a group of them that we wanted to go through this 2.5-week course, this work readiness course, so that we could place them into an OJT after they had successfully finished. What we did was we actually used the NOCTI assessment as the pre-assessment as well as the post-assessment to gauge skills learned. The reasoning that we decided to do that is because we wanted to see exactly what they learned from taking this test at the beginning of the workshop and then taking it once again, this assessment again, at the end of the workshop. but we found that it didn't work out as well as we'd hoped for a few reasons. First of all, this assessment itself is a very lengthy assessment. It takes 2 hours to complete it. Not only do they have to complete this NOCTI assessment when working with us, but they have to complete their TABE test, they have to complete an interest profiler, and they go through other types of assessments as well. So if we wouldn't have had this grant here to pay for them to actually sit in on this class and take these tests, I do not believe we would have had a turnout through any of our services, especially with the recent funding cuts. So I believe that that 2-hour pre-test as well as post-test will probably discourage individuals for coming in and taking these workshops. Also, whenever the pre-assessment was taken, the questions were exactly the same as what is on the post-assessment. And they mixed the questions up as far as order goes, but they were pretty much the same questions. The problem with that, the group I had, the group of dislocated workers, did very, very well on the pre-test. They showed that they already had the background knowledge needed through most of the groups to actually go ahead and be placed into that OJT opportunity. Of answering the question honestly what they felt the answer was, they second-guessed themselves and thought to themselves, hey, I wonder if this is the one that I had answered incorrectly before, and then they kind of skewed their answers. So some of the questions they had right the first time that they were doubtful about, they changed, and it really skewed their results at the end. So I don't really believe that the difference between the pre-assessment and post-assessment scores really showed in program and how much they had taken from this workshop, and need to find a way to sidestep that, not use.
But the test is designed just to be the post-assessment, so that's why we just want to make sure everybody understands that, you know, it's really not supposed to be a pre-assessment, but I'm glad that you went through that experience and, you know, learned,
Right.
you know, was able to share, you know, just to, you know, validate that it's really not meant to be a pre-assessment.
Exactly, definitely. And the last point as to why it didn't really work out is with the NOCTI assessment, it does show the individual scores in comparison to others that have taken the assessment within the location within the state. So because they're taking the same assessment twice, it's kind of, when Natasha had found out that we had been using this assessment, she had called and we had talked a little bit about different ways to use NOCTI and different things that LWIA 25 has learned and how we can improve our process for the rest of the state, which is where we came up with some of our recommendations here. So when we had talked about using a different pre-assessment, something a little bit shorter and something with different questions than what we were seeing during the first post-assessment. So what we had thought about doing was updating the employment activities pre-assessment and taking about 5 questions from each of the 10 skill areas that we've reviewed and creating a pre-assessment out of that. So we would have a total of 50 questions from 10 of the sections out of the wheel. And I think we're going to be looking at the wheel here in a couple minutes, so you'll know exactly what I'm talking about there. But we're wanting to take 5 questions out of each of those skill areas. And then we would have that 50-question pre-test that our customers could take. And after they finish this shorter pre-assessment, not only will we have an idea of how they scored overall, but the customer can see the workNet and clicking those sections on the wheel, or by attending another workshop that a workforce area has developed for that individual section. So what we did with the actual workshop, NOCTI has a curriculum available that goes through all of the information that's necessary to know to successfully complete that NOCTI assessment.
Right, and just real quick, it wasn't actually developed by NOCTI. It was
but it was written for more of the youth side in a semester-long course and not necessarily a short-term workshop. So whenever I was reviewing that curriculum, it had suggestions of how long to take for each class, but that had to be changed because, of course, I didn't have a full semester and I didn't have the students in there for 1 hour a day for an entire 5 months. So the information itself was fairly good, but it was focused towards another group, so that had to be changed a little bit to be utilized. Information from other sources that we've used in the past, whether it be workshops we've had in the past or books that we've received and bought, such as Job Savvy, or just information we developed ourselves. So we put all of that together to work in for that 2.5 week of instruction. Now, with speaking with Natasha, we came up with a couple other recommendations, especially considering lack of time, lack of staff, lack of funding. Workforce areas can't always provide in-depth workshops over all of the information that our customers are needed on a continuous basis. There's just no money there, and for a lot of places, the staff isn't there to do that as well. So we have come up with another idea that might work to save staff time, to save money, to save energy, but to continuously give this information in a workshop format to our customers so that they can always be improving, so that they can know what skills are necessary to become work ready and to go to work. So what we were provide maybe 2 workshops per month. And as more individuals start using this program, we can have more of the workforce areas, more organizations providing these workshops and take even more staff time away from each individual organization. And what the individuals will want to do, what the organizations will want to do, is take 1 or 2 sections on the wheel and focus on them and use information they've used before in workshops that they've given to customers, and have a monthly schedule set up to provide a workshop for each section on that wheel on a continuous basis. The example we have here is that maybe we could use teamwork the first Tuesday at 9 a.m., big picture first Wednesday at 10 a.m., communication first Thursday at 10 a.m., and etc. With all of the workforce areas working together, we still have a continuous run of workshops. So the host location, who's actually giving the workshop for the day, can provide an in-person workshop and broadcast it throughout the state. And then the workshops can also, so they'll be broadcasted through a webinar, but they can also be broadcasted in person for that individual location. The workshops would probably not have to be changed too much, just enough so that it can be put into webinar format. And then not only will it be broadcast during that one day, but it can be saved and archived on Illinois WorkNet so individuals can go and watch those workshops and participate in those workshops anytime that they actually have time, whether it be at home, within the resource rooms for our workforce areas, or wherever it might be that they have internet access. They will always have access to those workshops at any time. So some of the benefits of going through and actually working together as a state to put these workshops together, First of all, once again, it's going to save us time and it's going to save us money, all of us, because and still be able to provide the same information to all of our customers. Also, because it will be a continuous workshop, information stays fresh because it's updated all the time. I'm sure everybody knows that information is changing as far as work readiness. Employers are always looking for different things. We're always learning new information. So as information is found out there, it can be changed and updated to our customers. So they're always getting the best information. Participants then, if they can't make it on the scheduled day for the workshop, they don't have to wait to attend the live webinar. They can watch the archived webinar. Or if they are interrupted while watching the webinar or in person or didn't get all of the information that they felt was there, they can go back and watch it at a later time. Other LWEAs could provide a training room for customers to participate in the live webinar. So if our clients did not have computer access or internet access at home or cannot make it to a library, then maybe the workforce areas can provide a room with computers that we can either project that webinar out to everybody LWE as a chance to learn from what other areas know. I'm sure there's information out there that LWEA 25 that we have not heard that maybe LWEA 16 has, and something that our customers could of information and workshops will be beneficial to save us time and energy. It will reach out to all of our customers, and it will allow us to learn a little something as well. So we just wanted to throw that recommendation out there and see what everybody else thinks about that.
And one thing I think would also be good too is, especially if everyone's using the, especially with the early adopters and using the same, assessment, you still have the same basic information that you'd want to cover.
Right.
Too. So that would be good too.
And Natasha, I don't think I have any other information. Is there anything you can think of that I didn't cover?
No, I think you did good. Thank you. I didn't know if anybody has some initial thoughts. You can go ahead and type them in the general chat. We're going to go ahead and answer some polling questions. Workshops, different skills areas. One of the things that we've been doing is, I believe everyone should have seen this before too, it's the skills wheel. That's what I've been calling it. And it has the 12 different areas: academic, communication, problem solving, big picture, positive attitude, work ethic, career development, leadership, teamwork, attendance, self-presentation, independence initiative, computer literacy, and then the industry-wide technical skills. And so what we were really, trying to focus on is basically like communication through maybe computer literacy. But the idea is that, if you already have a workshop on some of these topics, that we could just use your existing workshop and have you, incorporate some of the in your email, your reminder email. I sent you a link. It's not made public yet through Illinois WorkNet. Even today, I know I was having it proofed again. We have it proofed several times, but it went through another proofing. Waiting for working with Omni right now. The graphic designer is, and I'll show you this in a minute. We'll look at the skills wheel, but it looks kind of like what you see right here. And what Omni's doing is making it so that whenever you hover over some of these sections on the wheel, a picture will come up. So whenever they go to the page, instead of saying just a great big long page full of all this text and blah, 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 how boring, they can go to an image and, hover over it, which is what people expect something to happen whenever you have an image nowadays, right? So the idea is that they would hover over it, and it would entice them to go in to learn more about that particular workplace skill. Use that, it's like a group type work. They have to come up with possible solutions and, to start discussing about the different types of workplace skills that are required, to solve that, or how would they react in that scenario. And then it would lead them into the skills section where they learn more specifically about what skills that the employers want or expect, and then they can rate them themselves. So eventually this will be an activity. And so just like our other activities where you can mark it as complete, the idea is that they would be able to have like a little I would guess we should go ahead, and I want to get your feedback on, well, before we move on to the polling questions, NOCTI, how to access the NOCTI, and then also how to access the observational assessment, and then also the skills area. Now, I just talked to my programmer, just came in just a few minutes ago, and they had updated some information. So first of all, to access the NOCTI, again, the process for NOCTI is that you have to become a proctor location where you can order assessments, and then you order the assessments and assign them to individuals, and have the individuals come in and take the assessment. So really it's a single sign-on process. So we're working towards, the way we're organizing this, we're working towards the newer updated design for the workforce pathway. You know that the whole individual's pathway was updated. Well, the workforce pathway is working towards that as well. So everything is going to eventually migrate to under My Tools. So we're going ahead and we have the My Tools section that's available. And on my screen, you'll see there's a lot more here than probably what's on yours, but assessment, where you click on NOCTI assessment, and it gives you some brief instructions. And the step one is to request to become a NOCTI 21st Century Skills testing location. And when you first come to this page, I already became a testing location. So what it will do, it'll have a link that's available for you. And when you click on the link, you just request to become a site, and you'll see it'll come up with the NOCTI's user agreement. So once you agree to the user agreement, then you can be a NOCTI location and order the 21st Century Skills Assessment. Now this will only be available for the early adopters until we get through, your first initial use of the NOCTI assessment and get your feedback and see if there's any changes or anything that we didn't think about, somehow before we start rolling this out to other areas. Now, I do want to just make sure that everybody realizes that, the user agreement, we take it very seriously because we want to protect the integrity, validity of, their system and their assessments. So do make sure everybody, reads it and understands that we don't want to jeopardize that at all, because there's some hefty fines that are associated with that as well if something were to happen. So basically, once you become a NOCTI site, you can see that test event, and then what you'll do is order the assessments online. And what we say is order them no more than 7 days before the event, because really what you want to try to do, you don't want to order like 100 of them and have to keep track of all that. You want to order them for that event, and then they'll be assigned on the day of the event. So we have some just general instructions. Make sure you meet the NOCTI system requirements before you have all these people come in and take the assessment. And I'll walk you through the next few steps here. Okay, so basically, if you're familiar with the customer group setup, but for this, you're going to order the assessment, and what you're going to do is either select it as youth, adult, or displaced workers. It's all the same assessment, but that way, whenever we have the report function available to you, you can run reports on, how your youth did versus the different groups. So you can select the quantity of assessments that you want to use, and then you can select the passcode, and I just usually use my name. It's not June anymore, it's July 12th. And then I'm going to select the testing date. Let's just say it's 7/20/2011. And I'm going to request my assessments. And when I do this, let me just go ahead and zoom in here a little bit so that you can see this a little better. Whenever you do that, you have submitted your request for the assessments, and it will tell you that you successfully created them. For your participants to go to, and it'll give them the passcode. And what you would want to do is click here to view or print the invitation, and they're formatted so that they're in a business card size handout. Let me zoom in so you can see them a little bit better. So what you could do is hand these out to, print them ahead of time, hand them out to each participant that's coming to the test event, or if you really wanted to, you could project it up on the screen so everyone could see it. And they would go to the URL that's been specified, and they would either log in or set up their account if they don't already have an account, but they should, because we would prefer to have them in your customer group ahead. But regardless, they'll give them an opportunity to set up their account. They enter the passcode, and once they enter the passcode, then they will be automatically redirected, and that assessment will be assigned to that person. So you don't have, the system will automatically have, basically, whenever you order the assessments, they'll all be in queue, okay? And so whenever a person sits down at a computer and enters in their information and enters in the passcode, then the Illinois WorkNet automatically distributes them to those people that have signed in with that passcode, and it is attached to their Illinois WorkNet account. And then once they go, they'll be redirected to the site where they will have, they'll complete the agree this really streamlines the process?
Definitely, definitely.
So that was our goal. But again, you are our early adopters, so we will definitely want your feedback on that as well. So that's the NOCTI assessment, and as I mentioned before, my programmers are still working on a few of the details and getting it with the actual, not their test site, but their production area, and then we'll have the reports and so forth. And that should be available on Monday. So video tools. Assessment was developed by the Chicago Workforce Investment Council, and it's used with the Chicago Public Schools. So it's used quite a bit. So Leslie Beller, she went ahead and put some information together for me, and I appreciate that. When you go to, let me go back. I go to My Tools again. Everything we're going to be moving the tool, the resource that you use under My Tools. Information that's more. So we'll have the observational assessment. We have some background information of why the assessment was developed, and what it's meant to be used for, and who should use the assessment. Now, the NOCTI assessment was an assessment that I'm going to call them students or participants take. But the observational assessment is the one that the instructor completes for that individual. So the preference is to have observation over time, so that they can we can provide feedback and help them with developing their skills, because you're looking at their behavior over time instead of hopefully everybody can be good for a couple days, but over time that's something a little bit different. So with the observational assessment, this is again some background information, and then how it's scored. We'll take a look at it in just a second, but there's a rubric that's available. I just used the rubric that they had developed from their materials, and they have a couple areas that as defined, or the fundamentals, they have to score yes, or they have to score 2 or higher in order to have passed the observational assessment. So basically, you want to make sure that your participants are in your customer group, and use the activities, use the workplace skills. I don't have the link here for the workplace skills because, again, it's not available yet through Illinois WorkNet to the general public. If you haven't already activated yours, there's some information here on activating your customer groups and using the invitation process. And we hopefully the IWDS will be releasing the sync on Thursday between Illinois WorkNet and IWDS. So that's what we're hoping for. As long as everything went well in their testing, that should happen. But anyway, regardless, everyone has access to their own personal groups, and you can do that through the invitation process. I won't go through that right now, but there are instructions, and there's a webinar on that, as well as using the invitation process to invite people to your customer groups. But once you're in your customer group, again, your customer summary page, that was what you guys are used to seeing with the summer youth activities. The employer evaluation, that's what you're used to seeing with the Summer Youth Employment Program as well. And then you will see, this is where you'll see your NOCTI link for the NOCTI assessment information. But since I don't have an example of that right now, you're not seeing it on the screen. But then we also have the observational assessment as well. So this is where each person, you'll have a link to be able to start an observational assessment just like you do for the employer evaluation. And you can see there's one assessment that's already been go ahead and start it. I'm going to start it. You can have up to 12 observational assessments for a person. So one of the things whenever you're thinking about your observational assessment is, what about your training program? How are you using this over time? What are your program requirements? So you can set up a basic schedule as to, this should it be, quarterly, annually, or so forth. So you can set up, just for yourself when you should be completing your observational assessments. And for the observational assessment, really all you have to do is, I thought it had already, it's just a simple radio button either to be successfully complete the observational assessment. You have to be able to select yes on all three of these fundamental areas. And I thought that they had just told me that it should be there tomorrow if it's not there already, or later on today, that whenever you click on either not these, whenever you click on, let's say for attitude, if you click on number 1 or number 2 or number 3, these are tied to a rubric, and it will show you the definition for that rubric. So it's not as though you have to have another printed out sheet of paper with a rubric on it. Whenever you click on one of these, the information will appear on the screen. So you don't need a whole separate page, but a printable version is available for you as well. Okay. Now with this, they do have, as part of the, let me go ahead and just complete the assessment here. I'm going to make some good, some bad, and I'm going to submit the assessment. Oh, I missed one. I have everything. Okay. So here we go. So with the summary, what you'll have is your area, you'll have the rating, and then you have the description as to what level they're at. So this is part of the rubric and the definition. So for procedure and rule following, they were rated with a 1, and the meaning of that is they have difficulty following the rules and procedures. So based on this information, we'll have, and it's not live right this minute, but these different fundamental areas will be associated and linked back to the skills wheel that I was referring to earlier, so that a student on their end, they'll be able to look at the with this topic and go back to the resources that are within Illinois workNet to help them work on enhancing that particular skill. Okay. Any questions so far? Let me go ahead and go back to my, I'm going to go to the wheel now. So right now, the information, or the workplace skills information, was originally there for the Summer Youth Employment Program, but it really needed to be enhanced. And so what we did, we took a look at not only the NOCTI skill areas, the observational assessment, the rubric, definitions. We also looked at um, we took the National Academy Foundation information. We took, what else? The National Work Readiness Skills Council, Common Core State Standards, and so forth. And we put them all together and developed these definitions that are used within our skills wheel. Now, with the all that information and that reference, that document, that will all be available on the Workforce Professionals Pathway. So you can look at, whenever we looked at all the information, we're like, well, everybody's pretty much saying the same thing. It's just nobody has it organized exactly the same. And so we know that there's a variety of segments, and use the information from the state and national resources to help develop the definitions for each of these segments. And what we can do is take the assessments that we have and the results and redirect you back to this skills wheel. And so you can look at additional resources to help you enhance your skills so that you will do better on your assessments as well. So, okay, now for the skills wheel, this will be an animated graphic. They're still working on that. And for each of these sections, once you go into an area, let's just pick positive attitude. It's set up so that the first page you go to is your scenario. So do you have a positive attitude that employers are looking for? Ask yourself, what would you do in this situation? And so you read the scenario, and then you can click on Answer, and it will open up in a new page so you can have, or you could have it open up in a new window so that you can see the skills and the answers to each of these scenarios. Okay. So we have our initial scenarios page, we have our skills page, and then we also have our next steps page. Okay. For the skills page, these are all the areas these are the combined definitions from all those national and state standards. And for each one, once you hover over each of these, like basically a subcategory, or you can help in this area, I'm comfortable in this area, I'm very confident in this area, an instructor or supervisor has confirmed that I have this skill. So they can rate themselves from a 1 through a 4. Now this is the area that we'll be making into more like an activity, so they can save the results as to what they believe their skill is. So you can take a look at that as well as a workforce professional that's helping your customers. Then we also have a listing of tools and resources that are available for each specific skill area. So this is all available through the skills wheel area. And the idea is that we didn't want to just put something out there with a huge long list that we know that they would never read. But the idea is that we have some scenarios there that you could use in a group environment. They can start discussing them. They can even click to the next page, find out the answer, and even further expand upon the answer. And then maybe assign to each one a person, and they could each group an area, and they could present on that or something like that. Another area that we added was what do employers want? And we talked about using, instead of just a career ladder, it says, your career ladder is more like rock climbing than actually going up a ladder. So if you would, it'll be animated as well, so as you hover over the numbers, that they actually have like a little sound bite. So I have one, so here, let me go ahead and if I click on number 1. Hopefully.
Moving up the career ladder is less like going straight up a ladder and more like rock climbing. Think of a rock wall as your career ladder. You and your friends are the climbers. Each of you have different features. You may have different ages.
So the idea is that they can choose each one of these areas. So sometimes whenever you have a video, I think videos are still good, but we're trying to provide a variety of ways to attract their attention. And so sometimes with a video, you make a decision within the first 5 seconds if you're going to listen to it or not. Well, these have the information broken down into pieces that, maybe if they get tired of listening to one, they can go ahead and jump over to 2, or they could just read it. So that's another area that's that we've been working on as well. Also, Brian had mentioned that there were some good activities in the curriculum, and not that we couldn't offer those, but we still needed to cover the same topic areas. So we went ahead and started putting together some drafts of some additional activities to add to workNet as well. So those were in your download file that you could take a look at. In a nutshell, let me go ahead and stop sharing this, minimize it. And so if you could, go ahead and I'm going to switch over to our next screen for polling questions because this ties into using the information that's available on Illinois WorkNet, through the skills wheel, as well as your own information, and being able to use that to, would you be willing to broadcast, maybe we just at least start out with 1, maybe 2 workshops that we could offer via webinar like Brian had talked about, and if so, and I added a couple polling questions here as either yes, that you'd be willing to, or yes, because I would like to, but I would need some assistance to get started. We understand that. I don't want you to just automatically say no because you haven't ever done it before, or you're not so sure about it. If we'd definitely be here to help you out with getting that set up. The information, that's one of those skill areas. If you could go ahead and answer that. And then, if you do like that idea, how would you use the webinars? Would you that are broadcasted out to the state? Would you use it, would you mainly like direct people to archive ones, or would you, how would you go about doing that? And also, just feel free to ask questions and talk, because I think most of you are, if you're calling in, you're unmuted. Well, let me go ahead and unmute one person. And then, or you could ask. Okay, we're planning on using this with our subcontracted. Okay. And, and also we're open to other ideas. What we're trying to do is think about ways that, if you're going to be using the skills assessment, the NOCTI assessment, we just want to make sure that we, can help each other out as much as possible. And I don't want to say teaching to the assessment, because that's not what I mean, but if we're all covering the same basic type of information, to be able to share that information. Everybody's so quiet. But I see Sue typing. Or if you have any thoughts or comments on the NOCTI assessment or the observational assessment, what I was able to show you today. That was your quick sample. Has any outreach been conducted to pilot assessment at the local school? I mean, I was making the assumption that they would be, you know, and Jason, clarify for me if I'm not understanding, but, you know, I know that there had been some interest by schools that would be interested. Okay. Jason and Sue typing some more. Okay, so you mean as, and okay. The sharing information. So Jason looked like he was typing. It was CPS be adopting assessment. The assessment, the Chicago Public Schools had originally expressed interest in becoming an early adopter for the NOCTI assessment. Now, the employee assessment and whatever they're already using, but that's okay. 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 Any other thoughts or comments? Okay. Okay, well, go ahead and switch it over to the next steps. So basically, for the next steps, you know, we still need to continue the implementation process. There's some, you know, just little different details that, you know, we still want to add in with these assessments. But as far as, and we'll also be, we have met, and that's on your work group page as well, with the some of the IT task force folks so that they could vet the computer skills areas. Can't submit your implementation plan by the 20th. Feedback on the implementation plan and start using the NOCTI assessment. And I thought instead in August, and you can give me your thoughts on this, instead of having just a webinar, or we can have a webinar, but I was thinking about using a survey to complete, you know, to collect some feedback, and then if we wanted to have a short webinar on that, if you want to have some discussions, on, actually using the NOCTI tool assessment and the observational assessment and, any of the tools that we have, or so we can make some updates before we roll it out to other areas. And that would be our, mainly our September, so we can get, additional, feedback. And get your feedback on the changes that were implemented. So if you have any, does anybody have any questions or any thoughts or fears? I don't know. Okay, well, everybody's really quiet, and if everything is, just answer one question for me so I know that we're all on the same page and everything is okay. Did do you feel like you have a good understanding of how you would access the assessments? It's all through Illinois WorkNet on the workforce professional side. And then also, what are your thoughts, or just give me some kind of feedback on, what are your thoughts on either the workplace skills wheel or the assessment information that you saw.
Natasha, if
Yeah, it's just a link. Okay, good deal.